Snow White. On a cold winter night, a queen living in a castle was looking outside from the window. She had been depressed every day because she hadn't been blessed with a child for a long time. When she was staring outside, snowflakes lightly floated down from the sky. She made a wish to a snowflake on her palm. God, I beg you to give me a beautiful and pretty baby like this snow. The queen was blessed with a baby soon, as if God granted her wish. The baby was a girl, so she was named Snow White. Snow White grew up healthily with the king's and queen's love. However, their happy days didn't last long. The queen suddenly fell ill and passed away. A year after the queen's death, the king found another queen to be his second wife. The new queen was overbearing. The queen instructed everyone around her to tell her that she was the most beautiful human in the world. She had the only magic mirror in the world. She would always ask the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?"
It's you, Queen.
She always smiled with great satisfaction when she heard its answer. This magic mirror never lied. As 10 years or so went by, Snow White grew up and became so beautiful that everybody admired her. One day, the queen asked the magic mirror, just like always, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?"
It is Snow White.
She was fuming when she heard it. Then she asked the same question to the magic mirror again and again. But no matter how many times she asked, the answer was always the same. "Snow White, I will never tolerate you." The queen called a huntsman. "Invite Snow White to the woods to kill her."
What? Are you serious?
"You have no choice. Bring her heart to prove it." The huntsman couldn't defy her with fear. Next morning, he invited Snow White to the woods. Snow White followed him happily. Walked deep into the woods, the huntsman suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?"
So sorry, Snow White. It's an order from the Queen.
He took out a dagger from his inside pocket. "Please, huntsman, please save me, please!" Snow White cried and frantically begged him to spare her life. Then, his conscience started bothering him while looking at her.
Oh no, I cannot do it. Please run away, Princess Snow White. Then you must never come back to the castle.
Snow White stood up and ran into the deep woods. The huntsman killed a wild boar and took its heart on his way back to the castle. When he arrived at the castle, he lied and showed the wild boar's heart to the queen. She received it without any doubt at all and grinned weirdly. As for Snow White, she had found a lovely little house after wandering around the deep woods. She walked slowly and quietly towards the house, and then peeped through the window. There is not anyone in the house. Is everyone out? She opened the door cautiously and then sneaked into the house. What a lovely house! Everything in the house was tiny and pretty. 7 small beds were arranged in a row against the wall. On a tiny table, there were 7 little dishes, 7 little cups, 7 little knives, and 7 little forks. She was exhausted from walking, so she lay down on the 7 small beds and fell asleep. Dwellers in this house came back at night. They were the 7 dwarfs working in a mine. When the 7 dwarfs went into the house, they found Snow White sleeping in their beds right away.
Who is she?
No idea. But she looks so tired. Let her stay in our beds for some time.
Snow White woke up before long, and she was surprised that the 7 dwarfs were surrounding her. Oh, I am sorry. I used your beds without asking.
It's okay. By the way, why are you here?
What is your name?
Snow White told them in detail why and how she had come here.
Poor Snow White. The queen is wicked.
We can never let you go back to such a horrible castle. How about living here with us, poor girl?
Really? I want to live together with you, if all of you accept me. In this way, Snow White and the 7 dwarfs began to live together in the small house. Snow White cleaned up the whole house, patched holes in the 7 dwarfs' shoes, while the 7 dwarfs were working in a mine. When the 7 dwarfs came back home, dinner was ready. The soup on the table looked absolutely delicious.
Yummy!
You're such a good cook.
Thank you for your compliment. You may eat as much as you like.
Perhaps one day, the queen will catch you living with us here.
Don't let anyone inside.
I know. I will never do it. Snow White appreciated their concerns very much. In the meantime, the queen, who thought that Snow White was dead, asked the magic mirror again. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?
It is Snow White.
What? Are you telling me Snow White is still alive?
The queen told her henchmen to go look for Snow White. One of the queen's henchmen located where Snow White hid, living with the 7 dwarfs. The queen came up with a plan to visit Snow White in person to kill her without fail. She disguised herself as an old woman and wore a black, long mantle over her head. Then she left her castle and headed towards the house where Snow White lived. A few days later, someone knocked on the door while Snow White was looking after the house.
Who is it?
Snow White put her head out of the window and saw an old woman wearing a black mantle.
Hello, young lady. I'll give you a sweet apple. Would you like a bite?
Thank you, Granny, but I can't let anyone inside.
If so, I won't come inside the house. Here they are.
The old woman lifted up a basket filled with apples in her hands and held it in front of the window. Let's see. I may be able to take something if it is given to me.
They are so delicious. Go ahead and try it.
Snow White bit into an apple. She suddenly fell on the floor. As you may have noticed, the apple Snow White was given was poisoned.
Good. She will never, ever wake up again.
The queen, still disguised as an old woman, came back to her castle with a sneer on her face. That evening, the 7 dwarfs finished their work and returned home. They found Snow White lying by the window. They rushed her to their beds and treated her, but alas, her eyes never opened. The 7 dwarfs made Snow White a glass coffin and laid her inside it. Thus, Snow White passed away, with the 7 dwarfs watching. A few days later, a prince appeared in front of the coffin. He had lost his way with his vassals while he was in the woods, hunting. The sight of Snow White in a glass coffin drew his eyes. "What a beautiful princess! Please, dwarfs, please give me the princess in the coffin. I promise you to protect and take care of her all my life." Since the prince pleaded them, the 7 dwarfs gave him her body with a glass coffin. The prince called his vassals and made them carry Snow White with the coffin. "Carry her, slowly and carefully." They carried her with her coffin on their shoulders and walked very deliberately. But one of them was carried off his foot in a tree stump, so the coffin moved up and down. And then, on the spur of the moment, an apple chip fell off her mouth. After a while, Snow White woke up and lifted up atop of the coffin. The vassals were all surprised and set the coffin down hastily. "I fell asleep for a long time. Well, who are you?" "I came here to see you, Snow White. Would you marry me?" The prince knelt down in front of Snow White and kissed the back of her hand. Although she was astonished at his sudden behavior, she nodded with her rosy cheeks. The prince picked up her on the horse, and they were headed for his castle. Of course, the 7 dwarfs waved in delight until they could no longer see the prince and Snow White. After getting to the country of the prince, they held a wedding ceremony. The whole country celebrated their grand ceremony. The prince and Snow White lived happily ever after. Incidentally, the wicked queen was locked in a dark prison in the basement of the castle by the king, who noticed that the queen had attempted to kill Snow White deliberately.